in the 6 remodels, the 2 home sales over $135 a square feet, and the demo year, 2012. So we're pretty confident that we could build here. So. And the chart on the left is the frontage feet for the all our top 100 lots and all of our land bank lots totaled up. So,
I think we'll get into this too. Part of this is if you say, okay, well, I'm going to do a house design, I'm going to go to architect or have a house design that's for a 30-foot frontage or a 25-foot frontage. Can I use that? Can I repeat that design in different places? And this kind of gives us, again, a sense of how many lots do we have that are in that kind of that frontage space, because that's really, that shapes ultimately your home design in a lot of cases. And again, just to reiterate that this is all information that we have at our disposal, and so again, putting it in one place in a easy to see and easy to use format, we're trying to make it as user friendly as possible for builders or other folks who might see this and say, yeah, I want to do that.
So we dived into the zoning code and figured out what we can build at this 509 North 5th Street. So we broke it down to the max. You can build a 4,300 square foot house. I did a quick search in our county, and we only have 53 homes that are that big. So it's a giant house. It's 19 by 92 feet. 92. So you could park 6 cars inside of this house, nose to tail. It's 2 stories. It has a full basement, but the min you can build is 750 square feet, one story, and one car garage. So there's a lot you could do between the max and the min on that house.
Yeah, the nice thing is you could do a tandem 2, so you could get a 2-car garage out of it, or even a tandem 2 or 3, depending on what you needed.
So I guess one of the things that we're, now that we have kind of the kind of structure, we've got a lot of the data now compiled, and now we're looking at kind of what are those next steps to actually get this out there and kind of how to actually use this information to encourage people to build on our land bank homes, as well as all of our urban infill home lots. But so some of the things that we're looking at doing kind of in next steps, which we'll get to in a second, are all kind of based around these key performance indicators. So raising the tax base. So obviously in this scenario, that means building new homes, getting new residents. Also, encouraging the housing market, trying to, right now we're proving that there's a rehab market. Now we're going to work to prove that there is a new construction market. And then just increasing the population, which, with new roofs comes more retail and other commercial development, which are the things that people ask for. So a few of the things that we're doing kind of next steps, there's a MBA master's level class at KU in the business school that is looking at this for their semester project. So they're going to help us come up with a marketing plan and some other things, some financing ideas, as well as looking at pre-approved housing designs. So working with local architects to see if we can come up with a situation where we can have a few, kind of a book that are home designs that are pre-approved through planning. We know they will fit on a certain lot that they're looking at, and that's just another way to kind of reduce the costs and remove some of those barriers. I also think that this is just a way for people to kind of help visualize what's possible in these areas. Because again, you look at a 25-foot lot, sometimes it's hard to think what kind of house can fit there. But if you have 5 or 6 different options that kind of make it as easy as building in a subdivision. All right, I like that one. let's do that. Then just kind of help people visualize what's possible. And then finally putting, and I think this is already done, putting this as well as a lot of the other information that Judd has compiled open now to the public on our open data portal. So we'll be coming forward with kind of more iterations as we're moving forward, but we want to make sure that we gave you an update on kind of some of the things that we're working on and the directions that we're going, and look forward to your feedback.
Commissioner Murguia.
I have a lot of questions. So have you all just been working on this internally, or have you been looking at best practices across the country to see what other people are doing?
Yeah, we've been looking all across the country. There's, it's shocking how few cities have gotten too far. So there are, Portland, Chattanooga have both done kind of pre-approved home designs, are two good examples that we've talked to. I think this is something that almost every large city is dealing with right now. So there's a lot of interesting research. I think everyone's kind of trying not to reinvent the wheel, but no one's really gotten too far. So, yeah, but we're looking all over.
And I guess one point on that too is different models, and I was in Detroit last fall and looking at how they've attacked some of their neighborhoods. And there's in some places, and it's not just Detroit, where they are there's a gap, a subsidy gap essentially between what the construction cost is and the sales cost. And in some places, that's getting filled sort of with direct dollars from local government or from sort of loan funds that are set up. And what we're trying to do when identifying these top 100 is, where are the conditions where we think the market has the most success of driving this kind of neighborhood renewal, where we can minimize any sort of public dollars that are at stake. One, because you all are aware, I mean, there's needs and challenges across the community, and there's not a lot of dollars to go around. And so, how can we use the information we have and from a model perspective, set it up so that the private sector can build houses and make a profit and help to revitalize neighborhoods and infill housing, versus other models that are being tried in other places where it's the government building houses or having more of a direct subsidy role. So that was one of the considerations as we looked at different models across the country.
Yeah, so if I use your formula that's up there, you've said that the building cost right now for residential construction, what you've found is about $135 a square foot. And you've looked at houses all the way from 750 square feet up to over 4,000 square feet. And from what I'm understanding from your presentation is that you've identified some lots that they might be able to build these houses on based on those numbers. But as someone that has done that for a living for a long time, I would tell you there are a number of things besides the square footage per house. That's just to build the house. That doesn't put in the appropriate infrastructure that you've talked about. The mandates from the city to put in sidewalk when you build a new house, or to repair sidewalk that isn't repaired on a vacant lot. It also doesn't take into consideration engineering fees, or it doesn't take into consideration architectural fees. And since I do this for a living, I haven't found anybody anywhere that can build a house, a new house of any size, for under $175,000. So when you add all those things, plus with the narrow lot guidelines that the unified government established for 25-foot front lots, the cost of the required landscaping, which I kind of think is ridiculous, because if that's all you can afford, you probably can't afford to take care of $20,000 worth of landscaping, which is what's typically required on this size of a lot. You're looking at a house over $200,000, which if you look at the median home value in Wyandotte County and you look at the median income, even if banks are willing to take a risk, that's not a risk, that's just not financially feasible to make that happen. And so it's good that you're looking at ways to make the lots more desirable, but as someone that's built over 30 single-family homes in my district, and done everything from single-family to multifamily, at the end of the day, at the bottom line, there is just a financial gap. And though I appreciate all the work that you did, in my mind, it goes back to our priority-based budgeting. It isn't really what we do. And I know for a fact, I can't speak for other districts, maybe the other commissioners around here can, but there are two very large pieces of property in my district that are vacant, one of which that sits in the land bank right now that a developer has come forward and offered to build 23 single-family houses on. There's a $500,000 gap on that $3.5 million project, and the government was unwilling to do any kind of gap financing. In fact, it came in front of us 3 or 4 times, and nobody wanted to do anything until the gap financing was in place. I just get concerned that we're government people. Well, most of you are government people and not developers. And when we try to understand what developers are doing, it's a whole new field. It's not what we don't build houses. And unless the government is going to start building these houses internally, which I personally would not recommend, that we let, I'm of the mindset that we stay in our own lane and let people do what they do. The other thing you've made no mention of is there's a number of not-for-profits that are building single-family homes all over our county and that are making it work. And I would just hope this would not turn into another tax credit project where everybody that wants to live there has to go through mountains of paperwork with the federal government in order to qualify. What I have witnessed in my 10 years of experience of residential development in an urban area is that people, I worked backwards. I looked at what people were paying and what they could afford and how much they were paying every month. And then I looked at how much house can you get for that? And there was always a financial gap. No matter if you took out the landscaping requirements, you took out the other requirements, there are some things just for general public safety, like architectural plans and structural engineering that has to be done. And though I think this is great, I think what you're going to find for not-for-profits who have been doing this work for years, you might want to talk to them. They've been doing it for a long time, that at the end of the day, there's still going to be a financial gap for these houses to be built. I mean, if you can prove me wrong, great, because I'll be the first to hire that builder that will build a house for $101,000 with no fee, because the builder also wants to be paid as well. Unless, like I said, the unified government is going to build that house themselves and not, again, do something where we're not getting any return at all. So I'm disappointed by the dots on the map, especially south of the river, because there's a number of places that have large tracts of land that you already have financial partners where the government would not be at risk that need that gap financing in order to make them happen. One of them was a senior development, and it was the same gap in that they were very small, single standing homes. They came with yard maintenance, sort of an all-inclusive sort of living environment, slab on grade even, no basement in them, just a hurricane and tornado shelters on the inside. And that, by this commission, was denied. And the 23 single-family home development was also denied because of the gap. I just tell you that this is great, and it's a lot of great data, but I think infrastructure and trying to figure out ways around that are fine, but at the end of the day, I've done this for over 10 years, you're still going to have a gap. And now that construction is through the roof, I mean, if you've tried to get a construction person out to do anything, it's been almost impossible because they're so backed up on stuff. It took us a month to get someone to come out and repair some concrete steps in a multifamily unit that one of the not-for-profits in my district runs. So it's very difficult to make that happen. Me personally, this is great, but I'd rather see us spend our time on gap financing for projects. I do agree that We need to try to market those areas that show the greatest return in the urban core, and then somehow earmark proceeds from that development to other harder develop and harder to sell areas. There should be sort of a revolving fund, and it could even be a revolving no-interest loan fund that, where the money comes back into a pot of money that can be used in other areas as the land is done. I will also tell you, your construction costs will go up dramatically when you're trying to do infill, even if, especially if you've never, I have built a house on a 25-foot lot, and I will tell you that the work and the effort and the amount of time and money it takes to try to build a house on a 25-foot lot drives your costs up as well. You're very close to the people next to you. It's very difficult. It requires other kind of special technical assistance. So I think the rehab program has been great, and that's been fantastic because they've come through the land bank at no cost and they've been able to turn them. But I just don't see how that's possible. I think where our time would be better spent is, I will tell you one anecdotal story. I'm really not into anecdotal stories, but I hear them all the time, the same story. I have a lady that lives in my district in East Argentine, and we were building 2-story, single-family houses with 3 and 4 bedrooms and a 2-car garage. And we also know the sweet spot in my district is 1,600 square feet. We know that that's the market. We know that there is the low-hanging fruit on the tree that can afford a house like that. So there was a lady that lived a couple doors down, and she lived in an old cinder block shotgun house in bad condition, but she keeps it very tidy and clean. And she happened to walk down the street and say, you know, I'd love to move my family, my 5 family members who live in a 2-bedroom shotgun home, into a house like that. So just out of curiosity, I asked her what her mortgage was. She said it's $315 a month. And I thought, well, we'll never get close to that with new construction. You can just do the math. You can't buy a new house for that. But what was really shocking to me is that she paid a $700 BPU bill because she has paper-thin, single-pane windows in these old houses that these people are trying to live in. She wasn't cooling and heating her house. She was heating and cooling the neighborhood, and she didn't have any other option. And what we discovered is in the new homes, so if you do the math on that, so that's about $1,000 a month she could be spending. We could get the price point of our 1,600 square foot home down to $900. And this is with taxes included and mortgage insurance for her, to $900. And we could lower her BPU bill in this house simply by building with builder grade, which we all know isn't top of the line, LEED or gold certified. We could get her BPU bill down to a little over $300, which would have made it a lot more affordable. It would have been a stretch for her, but more affordable. We've moved a number of those people, upgraded their quality of life, improved their living conditions, and in the end, they're paying almost the same amount of money that they were paying in an overcrowded shotgun bungalow. So I would really encourage all of you, in all the years I've been here and I've been a commissioner, we built over 35 new single-family homes. They are all occupied. We have over 17 senior apartments. They are all occupied. We have a waiting list for those. And because these other 2 developments were not considered by the commission for gap financing, I lost a number of residents to Piper because there is a handful of people that can afford those higher-end houses. And at the end of the day, we can have all this data discussion, but my frustration is it comes down to money. And the government needs to decide to invest in our urban core, not just in my district, wherever else. I mean, I would consult with the commissioners in their district. They're the people that are on the ground and in the trenches, and they should know what's going on. So I just think that that is a better way to get stuff done. We're a proven entity that has made that happen for a number of families. Their quality of life is dramatically better as a result of that. And I think it would move things forward a lot faster to let developers develop and let government be government. And again, I just say what it comes down to is gap financing and money, but I do have to say this, I really do appreciate your work on this. I know you're trying and you're trying to better understand, but you really need to utilize people that have had successful developments. I mean, our units are full, and to me, it just seems like a lot of talk about, hey, we're trying, but it never happens. And so continually, people come forward from the urban core saying, well, we want better housing. I can't tell you the number of people that move out of my district because they can't find the quality of housing that they want. I'm sitting on 2 deals with my partner, not-for-profit, and we can't move forward because government won't gap fund. So my deal is for gap financing, to wipe this off your plate. You have enough stuff to work on, and to partner with people that do this for a living and let people do their job and do something for the urban core.
Commissioner Burrows or McKiernan, who's chairing this, I'm sorry, I've forgotten, but I would love to jump in here on this one. So this is actually part of kind of a set of tandem projects that we're working on within staff right now. The other one that led out ahead of this, but it's taken more time because, as you note, the gap financing thing is a very complex issue. We have been working with local banks and Mutual of Omaha for about the last year, trying to develop a tool or a mechanism for that gap, which we actually let out with "The Gap is Real." That's the title of our business plan. And what we're trying to do, working with appraisers, real estate agents, and as well as I think Habitat, CHWC, and a few others have participated over the last year, not like ongoing, but in meetings with us, is trying to identify what that gap funding should be for. Because what we found is the banks aren't terribly interested in just kind of a $25,000 check, which, I mean, that doesn't shock me at all either. But what we figured out is the Federal Home Loan Bank out of Topeka offers a grant opportunity that we can go to. This only applies to low mod. That's not good enough for us, but we will be looking at a cocktail approach that we would be bringing forward to the banks that relates to this gap that pertains to very particular things like sewers, waters, basements, lead, and roofs. And on these vacant lots, that's a similar type of thing that we would try to find the gap for to start filling in. Money's limited. It's certainly not a fix-all. But we're also looking at layering in that we want the banks themselves to put in some money because the federal home loan's just a reimbursement to them, right? They're not really doing anything. So we want real game on their part. And we're going to be asking them to match what federal home loan would do. But we want that to lead out with this so that our developers have something to tap into to get these folks into a home. And on a new lot especially would be great.
Well, hopefully you can prove me wrong, but like I said, there are not-for-profits. I used to run one. I've been to all those same stops that you're talking about, and they never come up with any money. Occasionally, we'll get a $5,000 grant on 3 homes that we build. That's not going to fill the gap on building housing in the urban core. And if we continue to use low mod.
This would be much more money if I could let you know. We would be looking at about a $25,000 grant
Per house?
per house is what we'd be looking at. So, depending on the size of the house you're building and the amount of complexities, because the 135 is a low number. I mean, I think all of us recognize that's a bare bones home and probably not on a 25-foot lot. So realistically, we understand that's probably a standard subdivision lot, and it's, very base features in that home. So what we're saying is that we need this gap to stabilize our markets and being strategic about it.
Well, there's a lot of people that are in the grant writing business. I've been in it for a long time, and I've knocked on every door, been to every bank, established great relationships. And I will tell you, if you make that happen, fantastic, then I guess I'll be wrong. But in all of the relationship building that I did over the last decade, nobody's been able to come up with $25,000 per house, and it's still not going to close your gap. with that amount of money per unit based on your square footage. I mean, I'm just saying, you don't have to listen to me. It won't be the first time no one's listened to me. But I'm telling you, I've done this for a long time. There's 2 pro formas out there. It would build for $1 million, it would build over 55 units. Single family and senior housing without putting our residents at an affordable rate, without running our residents through the cumbersome process of having to fill out financial paperwork that is usually an inch thick, going through a screening process. I'm telling you, I've been there. And if you really think about it, by the time we pay all of you for all the time that you spend on this, and all of the other people on staff that are spending time on this, when really our job really isn't to build housing, we've probably spent that much money. So I just think it's not very efficient. It doesn't really match up for me with our priority-based budgeting and how staff needs to be spending their time. I think, like I said, we need to let people do what they do, and we've found some really good partners in order to do that.
I want to caution just the commission, we're not suggesting we're going to be the builders. We're simply trying to show people that there's opportunity in a few areas to do this. The gap funding that I'm looking at right now, working with the banks on, is actually mostly for existing housing that's not going to be in the land bank. So we're going to be working on some of our vacant properties that are sitting there being an annoyance to neighbors, helping pair people up and start conversations so we can move those back into occupied houses.
I have 2 sites that will allow you to build 23 units. It's already been platted. It already has architectural plans. There's no cost there because that's already been bared by the not-for-profit. And they're ready to be developed, and there's still a gap. No money's already been paid. So if you're looking for 2 sites to make a big splash and develop some momentum, there are 2 sites available. A builder is ready. He is the lowest price point I've been able to find in the Midwest. He's doing this same kind of development in rural Kansas. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Okay, well, we'll talk about it.
Thank you. Commissioner Walters, Commissioner Burrows?
Yes.
Commissioner Walters.
Thank you. Just a couple comments. I see on the agenda, this is an update. Was there an initial presentation of this program, or is this the initial presentation? So this is the Neighborhood Up Initiative? That's what's on our agenda, no?
What's emerged out of SOAR and then the Neighborhoods Up initiative. And so this is, sort of like we see this as sort of the evolution of those to, tackle, we said, we've gone after the remodels and the land bank properties that have come in, and those have been rehabbed successfully. And now we're looking at sort of the next piece, which is those vacant lots.
So I know that in the past, Land Bank has preserved or put a hold on certain properties because it was thought that there might be an opportunity for a bigger development than infill housing, right? So is that factored into your analysis, and are those properties not included in this recommendation?
You included all of them.
I would say no, then I didn't like pull out big tracts of land with this. I didn't.
So that's a good caveat, that there are probably locations where if you are taking an actual assembled area of multiple properties, this current iteration does not take that into account.
Okay, well, I would encourage us to do that.
Yeah.
Because I think there was an idea anyway or a goal that we might have a higher and better use for some of this property than infill housing.
Yeah, that still remains the goal in certain locations and certain sites.
And I didn't quite understand the introduction. Judd, is it?
Yes.
And you're a consultant?
No.
He works for you. He works for us. I'm sorry. Judd, I'm sorry, I've I don't believe I've met you before, so I apologize for that. So what is your role in this, other than, are you pretty much the data gatherer and manager?
So Judd is on my staff as part of the knowledge department. He's the UG data analyst, so.
Perfect.
He leads our open data efforts. He led the UG's first data inventory several years back, and so he is the source of sort of all things data source related.
I thought I heard you referenced as a consultant, so that confused me.
no.
I apologize. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrows? Just a couple of comments from my perspective. I think Commissioner Murguia makes a number of really good points that you should take into consideration. Certainly the gap is real. One of the things that we have to struggle with as a local government is how much a local government can or should close that gap when it exists. And so that's something that we're going to continue to wrestle with as we wrestle with the availability of funds for provision of services in addition to funding gaps. I would highly recommend that you follow her suggestion that you meet with especially the not-for-profit developers who are currently making it happen. They're closing gaps right now, and sometimes that's through raising of private funds, but they have, as she pointed out, really established the relationships that allow them to know all of the right partners to bring to the table to close gaps and get this done. Would it be fair to say that your algorithm might help developers identify the best lots and so we might be able to do some legwork for a developer who would otherwise build it, and we can provide them with data that would help them make a better decision, a decision that's a better business case for them. Then a couple of other things I would suggest that, and you may have looked at this and I don't know, is who's the owner, current owner of the lot? Is that current owner responsive to communication? Does that, I'm sorry, these are all land bank lots. Okay, so we know that they're responsible. Then I'll add an overlay to that. One of the other problems that we have in a lot of our neighborhoods are lots that we do not own that might even be better than some of these in terms of development. And we need to knock down the barriers to finding. And so I guess that's where my head is going is we have a lot of irresponsible owners who are not available and who don't play nice in their neighborhoods.
Commissioner McKiernan, that is certainly something that, as we've gotten our vacancy registry up to some 600 registrations now, that staff within the SOAR team, including Judd, who's working with us on some data mining right now, are looking at how we confront those individuals who are owning property that is being, assessed penalties. No one's been living there for some time. We can somehow track an owner and trying to figure out how we pair them up with some of our land bank rehab folks that are looking for more throughput for their business. So I think there's a lot of energy around the data we've been collecting, the information we've been able to discern about sort of what is happening in the market, including the stuff that's been done here tonight. I know it's not the magic bullet that we all want it to be, but without this information, we can't be as responsive of a government towards what is needed to get out of the way.
Fantastic.
And just to clarify too, we have been having conversations with other folks who are in this space. I don't know if you want to speak to that in terms of who've done development, we're trying to, and we welcome sort of more feedback, and Commissioner, appreciate your feedback, to again, refine this. This is, when we went out and looked at other communities, this is not, this is a hard nut to crack, and it's something that cities, across the country are wrestling with. That's where we're starting with a modest number. We're not trying to say, here's how we go after, 4,000 lots. It's okay, let's start with a manageable number. Let's sort of iterate our way through this. Let's learn as we go. Let's get feedback and understand what's useful to the market and what's not, because we very much, we aren't and don't want to be in the position of going out and building houses. We want the market to do what the market does best, and to help make sure that we're not hindrances of that, and to facilitate that however we can.
Okay. Commissioner Murguia.
So I just have a final comment. The data that you have is great, but I'll just again share a district story. So 10 years ago, I requested a map of tax delinquent land bank property in my district. And when I got it, I wanted to be able to take that and market it to developers, much of what they're talking about. And what I discovered on that map is that you could request that KU Hospital and KU Medical Center, they are tax delinquent $7,000, and that they could go into tax sale, even though they don't pay taxes. So our records were not accurate. So there is a big red dot on KU Medical Center and KU Hospital. So if I take that to a developer, they're going to say, well, I'm putting KU Med and KU Hospital up for tax sale, even though they don't pay taxes. And in 10 years, we have not been able to figure out how to get the red dot off those two major entities in 10 years so that I could take the map to the developers and actually give them an accurate map. In addition to that, Vega Field, if anybody wants to buy it, it's in the land bank. It is not, does not have our blue stamp on it. So if a developer came forward and said, I want to buy Vega Field and I want to turn it into housing, it's in our land bank. It does not show as a unified government park when you get the map. Ruby Park has a major parcel right in the middle of it that if you want to build a house there, you can build a house if you want to. Of course, a man came forward about 8 years ago, purchased the property. We had to purchase it back from him for more money because our data was wrong. So I have, it's great to collect the data that we have, but I just know from my land bank map, in 10 years later, I still don't have a land bank map that gives me accurate, what is tax delinquent, what is in the land bank, what is unified government owned. I still don't have an accurate map, so I don't know how we can market anything until that information is accurate. And I was working on this 10 years ago when I first became a commissioner. I wanted to be able to take that map out and market it to a bunch of developers and say, these are those areas that have potential development. And of course, there was always a snafu. Somebody would say, I want those parcels of ground. And it was always, well, there's a lien on the title, or it's not really in land bank. It hasn't gone through tax sale yet. So I just say, I'm kind of skeptical of stuff until we actually have a map, or at least I have a map that really tells people what's available in my district. And it really has handicapped me for a decade to be able to go out and market it to developers in my district. I can do that. I know that's not necessarily the role of a commissioner, but I do want to see development in my district. And I just think that until that data is accurate, I can't. I've even had, so I serve on the Board of Regents, and the other interesting thing is on the KU property, it shows that the Board of Regents owns KU Hospital and KU Medical Center. The Board of Regents doesn't own that, and that the Board of Regents is tax delinquent. And even with a letter from their legal department to our legal department, the tax delinquencies remain on those maps for 10 years. So I'm very frustrated by that.
I think that's something, though, that all of you absolutely know, is that one of our continuing challenges is just to make sure that our data integrity is good and that our records are an accurate reflection of our properties.
Commissioner, in response to this, so again, everything is a process and a continuum that we're working on since we started SOAR. So we've recognized these issues existed, and we've had to work through a series of things to get to the point where we were able to start work. In January of this year, we started a land asset management team. Some of you have heard us talk about that in a couple of our presentations in the last while. That land asset management team has been working through a variety of things. One of them that it's starting to tackle right now is these properties, such as Commissioner Murguia's KU property, which currently I have 2 staff members, one in legal, one in delinquent real estate, working to solve. These are not hard to solve, but they're time consuming. So we know what we have to do to fix them. There's a cost behind some of this because there are fees that have to be paid, costs that have to be worked through, but we have identified the first 200 we are going to work on. There are more. There are issues, as you have noted, throughout our land management systems that we have to fix to go forward. And so I want you to understand, we recognize that, and we have a crew of people working. People sitting here include Judd, Catherine, and Chris, who are on this land asset management team. We have a strong desire to move through these projects. And so I apologize for however we got where we're at, but you know that going forward, we're trying to clean these up. We're also trying to get things out of the land bank, as you had an intern working on, that don't belong in there. Simply don't belong in there. They're-
Highway easement,
Highway easements,
cliffs,
things,
that
yeah.
houses could fall off.
That
Nobody's gonna
happened.
develop.
There was a reason behind it. I'm not really sure of it at the time it happened. But what I can tell you is we're working to identify where those belong, which is tedious. There are thousands of them. So we're working through that, and we will update you as we solve these, because you need to know that they've been solved and that we have the procedures in place. Going forward, I think we aren't adding to that problem. These are historic problems that have occurred, in the prior to the last 5 years, but we've got to go back and fix those historic problems. So I apologize for where we're at, but we are working to clean that up, and we recognize it as a significant issue, just as you do.
And I also recognize that all of you, I think, are new in the last 10 years. And so it's totally different now than what it was. I'm still just saying, it's been 10 years. I'm not blaming it on any of you. And I know that you're working very hard on it. Be very clear. And you're making progress. But lifetimes, families' lives change in a decade.
Yes.
And the needs are not the same anymore. And we're missing all of those families as every day that goes by. And the culture of government is not to necessarily have a sense of urgency. The whole drive of the fair market world is the sense of urgency they have, because unlike government, if they don't perform, the fair market doesn't perform, they don't get paid. They have to perform. And so they have that drive. And with all the consultants, I can't count the number of master plans, consultants, and all the people we hired under previous administration and put plans on shelves, and we didn't even have correct data. So I guess I would say time better spent for all of you would have been to hire a consultant to figure this out, a team of people that was their focus, while you were more focused on specific government-related functions, which has massively improved with things like mowing lots that are in our land bank, which I've seen a massive improvement on, but still needs work, and we all know that. Not a criticism, it's made a lot of progress, but we need to make more. And personally, as a commissioner, I'd rather see your time spent on things like that, and I'd rather have us outsource these sorts of issues that are tedious, that could be handled better, maybe by someone with a different skill set.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions from the commission? This item was for information only. Is there any public comment on this item? Ma'am, if you'd come to the podium in the middle of the room here, and if you'd check to make sure that the green light is on at the base of the microphone, if you'd state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to
Okay.
make comments.
Thank you. My name's Faith Rivera. I live at 908 Hagman Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66103. I'm in Rosedale. And some of my concerns about what is being talked about here is, just like Commissioner Ann McGee was saying, we as a community are finding out, talking to each other, is that people are leaving our communities because we can't afford to live here. And you want to make houses that are more expensive, which is kind of concerning to me, because I want to keep my family here. I want to keep our people here. I want to keep my grandkids here. I want to keep my children here. But we're finding out that, you guys want to build these houses and stuff like that makes it unattainable for us to live here. Again, like Ann said, we have 163 million people here in our community, and our thousand, and our income base is $42,783. You guys don't struggle like we struggle. You guys have iPhone watches. You guys have the best phones. You're not struggling like us. We can't afford these homes. We, as a community, have got together and have discussed this. We need more housing that is affordable for us. So please think about this when you guys are doing these wonderful things that you're doing, but think about us as the community that is here fighting, that have been here. I'm third generation Rosedalian. Think about my kids are going to be fourth generation. And my kids want to stay here, but they can't if they can't afford to live here. And then when you're talking, there was nothing about the community. I haven't been reached out about this community information that you guys have out. I don't think Cece has, or Miss Ford. There's no information out there for us, and we are, oh, Miss Jackson, I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I mean, we are out here being diligent and fighting and trying to find out what we can do and what you guys are doing for us. And it's scary. This is scaring me for my community and my retired fellow neighbors. So please think about the community when you're thinking about stuff like that. Thank you,
1 minute,
Ann.
ma'am.
And just want to say that it is very sad to see that you guys don't even know about the, like Ann was saying, about the KU and stuff like that. I mean, that is horrible. That's 5 years? Come on, you guys could do better. We as UG, we guys really need to do better for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. All right, that wraps up this first item on our agenda this evening. Thank you very much to staff for making this presentation. And now I can actually turn it to Mr. Slaughter for item number 2, and that is Land Bank Business, a transfer from the Land Bank.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have one item here. It's just a simple transfer, 1342 Oakland Avenue. Last month, we presented the rehab of 1342, so this request is just for the lot to the west to go to the rehabber. We brought items like this to you guys before, so tonight, that's the request, is to approve the transfer request so we can forward for the final approval.
Mr. Walters. There's a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion by the committee? Commissioner Burrows.
I do have a question. It was brought up about the landscaping on these homes. I noticed there was very little landscaping done on this rehab. Are we requiring landscaping of any type on the rehabs?
No. I mean, they have to go through all the city processes and they have to pass inspections, so we pretty much feel that they understand what needs to be done to, pass from a city standpoint.
Can we go back to the picture?
Sure.
I think if we just have a little bit better presence with even some grass or possibly,
Well, this
possibly.
The grass will be laid, won't it?
And this picture was taken pretty much a month ago, so a lot of our rehabs have had new sod laid, but we trust they know what they're doing to put it on the market and sell it.
Is there a certain amount of money? I know the message a minute ago was $20,000. I believe the number was presented, but do we have a percentage that we mandate goes into landscaping, like 10% of the finished product, anything along those lines to ensure that we get some
No, we're just
greenery.
happy that the house is in better shape.
New construction. So I'm pretty sure, to help with Commissioner Burrow's question, the TND, which is, for those that don't know, there's a traditional neighborhood design, which is for these small 25-foot lot houses that they're talking about. They require an enormous amount of landscaping. I just can think of a house that we did about 3 or 4 years ago where the landscaping was $20,000. We moved in a resident, and we made the house very affordable for this family to move into a brand-new house. And, people that don't have a lot of money usually are working, maybe 1 or 2 jobs, and they're just trying to pay for their house. And to maintenance landscaping, and then the kind of landscaping that was required, took a lot of effort. And so now that the city is gone, most of that landscaping is gone. The house still looks beautiful, and there's still a couple of trees, which is great, but I guess I just don't get the landscaping requirement, because what ends up usually, what I've seen usually happen is it ends up being a disaster, and it looks worse than if it was just grass. Not that, what we have discovered is that some foundation, shrubbery coverage, and a rose bush or a tree has been sufficient, which is nowhere near what the requirements are for T&D on new construction. If you would like to see every line item detail of what this one house cost us after landscaping, it was unbelievable. And as a not-for-profit developer, we sell those houses at cost. If you're a for-profit developer, you need to make some money. But as a not-for-profit developer, you can sell them at cost as long as you can cash flow. And we usually bear the burden of the bank loan. That's the other thing that I heard nothing about. So the program that we run is, if this house is $100,000 and maybe the owner doesn't have any credit, not necessarily bad credit, we can allow them to move in. The not-for-profit carries the loan, and their payment is just passed through the not-for-profit because they're not able to get the loan for that house. And then at the end of 5 years, we're able to go back to our banking partner and say, hey, this is the person that's been making the loan, this is their credit, we're giving them an A1 credit, they've made their payments every month. Now it's time for them to graduate to having their own mortgage. The difficulty we've had, the only difficulty we've had, is no one wants to leave us. Once we're their landlord and they trust us and we establish that banking relationship with them, they don't want to leave, which is fine, but it just impedes their ability to develop credit on their own. So, for all it's worth.
Thank you very much. There's been a motion and a second to approve this transfer as submitted. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters. Margia.
Aye.
Burrows. McKiernan.
Aye. That takes us to item number 3 on our agenda, which is an update from the Land Bank Rehab Program. Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you, Commissioner. So our contractor number continues to grow. We're sitting at 170 contractors. Our houses, our inventory, we're down to 74. The houses with no offers, we have 4. Our demos are still steady at 33. And we are down to 14 houses recommended for demo. Rehab started, we are at 52. And just to wait closing is we're sitting at 4. And our completed rehab is now up to 44. And we'll share a couple of those today. 1220 Georgia Avenue. And the completed rehab. We received this property from tax sale 337. It was a little bit over $9,000 as a minimum due. The rehabber took 7 months. When we received the property, it was almost a little bit over $3,400, and it's currently listed for $89,500. And the last one tonight, 3906 Washington Avenue. And I asked to pay attention to the old garage there. But there's some interior pics. And now the picture of the finished rehab. I will add, you can notice the new sod that's out there. The property was purchased in from tax sale 336, again about $9,000. It took roughly 11 months. The appraised value was just a little bit under $12,000. And currently the property is listed for about $115,000. So that's the rehab update for tonight.
Chris, I just want to say, I love that program, and I think you're doing a great job. We just need to, like Commissioner Walters and I were discussing, we just need to make that a bigger program. And I do think there's some ways to advance it. Like I said, there can be different financing options that we might want to explore for the home buyer.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your work. Thank you all for your presentation tonight. That's the last item on our committee agenda. And we have one more item under the public agenda. Item number 1 is an appearance by Ms. Tashir Mank. She is asking to address the committee regarding the lack of development in the Northeast. If you would state your name and your address for the record, you'll have up to 5 minutes to make your comment. I will go ahead and keep a timer, and I'll let you know when you have a minute remaining.
My name is Tasir Mank, and I live at 212 North 38th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. So I came here because we don't have a grocery store on the northeast side. Growing up here in Wyandotte County, it was at least like 6 of them. It was one at 42nd and Parallel, 42nd and State, 38th and State, 29th and State, and one on 7th Street, several on Quindaro. Now we have 0. There's no laundromat, only on like 34th and State, but nothing past that. So everybody from Bell Crossing over has to at least go there or all the way up to Speedway, I think is the closest one from that side. So, I mean, it's like, they call it a food desert over there. I call it redlining. It's nothing to make that area viable. There's no grocery store. People can't survive without going to the grocery store. A lot of people don't have cars. You can't carry your groceries on the bus. Again, Ms. McGee said something about affordable housing. No one on Quindaro or in that area. My mom actually stays a couple of houses down from the house you guys got up for $89,000. Nobody wants to buy a house in that area for $89,000. At least I wouldn't want to spend my money in that area, not $89,000. And I can't even go to the grocery store. So I see, and by all means, I'm glad that you guys are building houses in that area. But again, how are you going to build houses where there's no grocery store? The closest one would probably be Wild Woody's on 51st and Leavenworth Road, or the one on the southeast side, which would be Sunfresh. Nobody wants to buy their meat at Aldi's or Save a Lot. She lives on the northeast side. She wanted to say what she wanted on the northeast side.
Okay, ma'am, this public appearance is for you.
Okay.
And so if you would continue with your statement, please.
Okay. And then Ms. McGee also brought up the fact of BPU and that fact that we can't really afford our BPU bills on the northeast side as well, or anywhere in Wyandotte County, for that matter, whether your house is been weatherized or not. BPU is out of control with their prices, and even the UG side of it has went up. So, I mean, we just have a whole lot of lack of development, lack of care, lack of empathy or sympathy for the people living on the northeast side of town.
Ma'am, thank you very much for your appearance this evening.
I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Make, were you referring to a laundromat like a dry cleaner, or were you referring to a
A
laundromat? to
laundromat
actually
where you
wash-
go and wash and dry your clothes.
Okay.
Like, there's no laundromat past state.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your appearance this evening. There is no other items before this committee. We are adjourned. There is no Economic Development and Finance Committee meeting this evening, and so that is the end of tonight's meetings.